starting now, and we're live. So hello everyone, welcome to the 2015 Global Dialogue on Waste. We're very proud to be conducting our panel discussions consecutively for the third year to disseminate knowledge and in waste management. As part of the 2015 Global Dialogue on Waste, we will host a panel discussion every Wednesday until the end of December. Our next panel will be on October 28th, and we'll be discussing the role of mobile applications in waste management. You can learn more about the time and other details of all upcoming panels by following us on social media or by subscribing to our newsletter. Today, our panel will explore the scale of the plastic pollution problem and how our panelists are addressing the issue and that issue. In 2013, as one of our first panels, we brought Beth Terry, Plastic Pollution Coalition, Daniela Russo, and the Ocean Conservancy and Algalita Institute to discuss the same issue. You can find the recording and excerpts in our archives page, but things have changed rapidly since then, and our panel will continue that discussion today. Special mention today at 1:30 p.m., Be-Waste-Wise advisor Jacqueline Oatman, who's the founder of WeHateToWaste.com, is organizing a free workshop which shows how to waste less and live better in New York City. If you're around, please join me there. For more details, tweet to us at BeWasteWise. We welcome you to join this conversation with your questions and comments. You can use the live chat window on our homepage or tweet to us at BeWasteWise. If you're watching this video after its live broadcast, you can find recordings of all our panel discussions on our website, www.wastewise.be. Finally, thanks to commongroundcompost.com for adding events in the 2015 Global Dialogue on Waste to their public calendar. So let's start the discussion today. And we have all our panelists here: Dianna Cohen from Plastic Pollution Coalition, Andrew Almack from Plastics for Change, Katherine from Save Our Shores, and Dr. Marcus Eriksen from the Gyres Institute. We'll start with Andrew and try to understand what he's doing and know a little bit about him. So Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of Plastics for Change, and I'm in India right now, and we're implementing this this mobile platform. Basically, it's a process and mobile technology for ensuring that those at the base of the supply chain in informal recycling, places that have a lot of informal recycling, that the people at the base of the supply chain get fair market access. And basically our thought is that if we can ensure that they have fair market access, then it will help to increase the recycling rates and prevent plastic from ending up in the places that we don't want it to end up.
Great, thank you.
So and, that's it in a nutshell.
All right, great, thank you. And Dianna, do you want to go next?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Dianna Cohen, and I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Plastic Pollution Coalition. We're a global coalition. We were founded in the end of 2009. We now have 100 NGOs and businesses around the world who are all working to stop plastic pollution and to raise awareness about the toxic impacts.
Great, thank you, Dianna. And Katherine. Katherine has just joined Save Our Shores as its new director, so let's welcome her and wish her all the best. So Katherine, go ahead.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, so I just joined at the beginning of this month as the executive director of Save Our Shores. Save Our Shores is a fantastic coastal conservation and marine environment conservation organization. Our geographic focus is the central coast of California. And, you know, obviously from our name, Save Our Shores, we're really interested in trying to prevent waste and litter from accumulating on the coastline, the beautiful coastline of central California, as well as stem the flow of plastics and other debris into the marine environment and in our marine sanctuary in the Monterey Bay. Prior to joining Save Our Shores, I've had a long history of working on corporate sustainability issues, and particularly plastics of all sorts, working most recently with Green Blue and the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, and prior to that for Business for Social Responsibility in San Francisco. So it's great to be with this panel, especially in my new role.
Great,
thank you,
Katherine. And Marcus, go for it.
Sure. My name is Marcus Eriksen. I am the research director and co-founder of the Gyres Institute. And we have, in the last 6 years, since we began, sailed around the world about 20 expeditions discovering multiple accumulation zones in the oceans. So we do research on how much trash is out there and the abundance and the ecological impacts. We translate that into campaigns, public education, but mostly campaigns, like the microbead campaign that you saw, the small plastic beads in face washes. We had co-authored a paper describing microbeads in the Great Lakes, and we just saw in the last few weeks, we're seeing policy wins across the U.S. to ban microbeads in products. So we do the science and the advocacy kind of side by side, and that's what we're about, and we're working on the next campaigns coming up soon.
Great, wonderful, and it's really wonderful work all of you are doing around the world. And my first question is, I'm trying to understand. All of us know about the scale of the problem, and so I'm just trying to understand how your efforts are addressing that scale of the problem. And maybe I can start with Marcus Eriksen, because he did 20 expeditions into the sea. I mean, and I think the vast ocean, you just see the vastness of the place. And then you also mentioned that in the desert in UAE, a doctor called you who was finding plastics in camel stomachs. And again, you find the same plastic in Midway Islands and bird stomachs. So, I mean, it's a huge problem in all these places which are very remote. So, how do you reconcile with the scale, and how are your efforts addressing them?
Well, I think the scale. I think it's important to understand the most recent science. We have published more papers on this issue in the last 4 years than the previous 4 decades. We know a lot. I think you can boil down the knowledge now into 3 important points. One is the abundance of this plastic waste. It gets to the ocean, and these gyres are no islands form. It's a place where plastics actually shred into smaller particles. So you can think of coastlines as the generators, and the middle of the ocean as the shredder that just eviscerates plastics and redistributes microplastics worldwide. So we have these clouds, like a smog of plastic worldwide. So it's global distribution. The other is the toxicity. We now know that microplastics become these vectors for pollutants. They become sponges for toxins. And to the degree that many scientists think we should label plastics in the oceans as a hazardous substance. So it's very toxic, globally distributed. And last is the ecological impacts. They're ecosystem-wide. It's not like one turtle, one bird, one whale. It's across the board. We have the base of the food chain ingesting this toxic material worldwide. So the point is, there are 3 things: global distribution, ecosystem-wide impacts, and highly toxic materials. It's dangerous at sea. And so that research tells us we've got to stop this problem on land. You're out in the ocean, you don't see big islands with lots of trash. You drag a net and you get a handful of confetti. So how we address this problem, it's inland solutions. It's looking at producer responsibility from the very top when we make a product all the way to waste management. And those multiple strategies, I think the organizations that are here and others are all sort of nipping at this problem from different perspectives. Our work is turning the research into like policy campaigns on the microbeads, or it could be straws or plastic bags or the foam trays in schools. That's how we nip the problem. Other organizations have different approaches.
Mm-hmm. Great. And talking about the islands in the ocean, I know Dianna started when she first came to know about the problem. She thought of because of the media at that point, she thought of these as large islands in the ocean, and kind of got ready to deal with them. And later on, learned about the actual nature. So Dianna, do you want to talk about what PPC is doing? I mean, the kind of coalition that you're forming to address this problem globally?
Sure. So, I mean, I should just explain from my own personal perspective. I'm a visual artist, and I've been making artwork out of plastic bags for more than 25 years that I cut up and sew back together. And when I began, I also love to be in the ocean, and I started surfing when I was about 30, so in the course of my life, I began to see more and more plastic in the sea, in the ocean, and try to grab it and collect it, tie it onto my bathing suit, bring it out, And I mean, at this point, I would say now when I'm in the ocean, there's so much that it's no longer possible for an individual to clean up what I'm seeing, I think. And along those lines, that is how I came to this initial idea. I think a lot of us heard the call, Marcus and I both, from a Captain Charles mentor and public figure who really was sounding the alarm to people that there was a crisis happening, but none of us were really seeing it yet. And for me, my original response to that was this idea that we need to go out and physically clean it up. And when I first met Captain Moore, I actually remember meeting Captain Moore and Marcus and Anna all together. Charlie looked at me and said, "You can't clean it up." And I said to him, you know, you shouldn't say that to people who are enthusiastic and energized about this, because some kid is going to come along and figure out how to clean it up. And he said, no, you can't clean it up, to me. So that's 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And now we know a lot more thanks to the work that Gyres is doing, Algalita is doing, Tara Marine, various expeditions. And what you realize, and what was a big revelation for me, is this idea that rather than attempting to clean it up, in order to back up and look at the bigger picture, that was to back up back to land. And when you back up back to land, it really comes down to source reduction. And there are various ways that we can bring about source reduction. I think on the most basic level, it's through education and awareness and individual action. And in a way, I think this is most important catalyst. And when I came together with the other 3 original co-founders of Plastic Pollution Coalition, this was our goal. How do we begin to raise awareness, and how do we join together very disparate groups? Maybe a small group that's working on marine turtle conservation in Central America to connect with another group that's working on the same thing, but they're on an island in the Ionian Sea in Greece. How do we help create a thread so that we can amplify a common message together? And so that was the premise of the coalition when we began, but it was also a multi-pronged approach, because we felt that we not only need to work on raising awareness and individual action, which again I think is the most key, but also work on institutional level of this, how businesses are approaching it, and on policy and legislation. So I think that we have to approach this issue. It's going to take all of us, and that is where the concept of creating a coalition came from. So we work to have 4 coalition calls per year, and interact with each other and share what everybody's doing, and hope that we can really find room and space for collaborations, and that is happening more and more. Right. So we're also watching, obviously, this issue and the terminology, plastic pollution, raise, within the public discourse, come up in the public discourse, and part of that idea is to not just call it marine debris, litter, waste, rubbish, garbage, but to actually, when we are talking about single-use and disposable plastic and plastic, to call it what it is, which is plastic pollution. Plastic pollution, right. So thank you. So you were sewing plastic together earlier, and now you're sewing organizations from around the world together. So that's wonderful. And talking about the scale again, I think I wanted to ask Katherine about, their focus right now is in the Monterey Bay, but the beaches, the plastic that comes onto the beach there comes from all around the world. So how do you reconcile your work with, the scale, Katherine?
Yeah, well, in terms of reconciling the scale, I mean, it's almost an impossible thing to get your head around. I mean, it's so huge, it's so incredible. It's ongoing. It's constant. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and something that you can't really sort of get to the bottom of and understand. I think the work that Marcus does in organizations like his that expose the problem and show the problem and demonstrate how much is actually, out there in those gyres and what's happening to it once it gets into the ocean is one of the best ways to build that awareness. for our part, we have three kind of main themes in terms of how we approach our work around conservation. And they're awareness building, advocacy, and direct action. So again, Marcus mentioned how important education is and making sure that the public understands what the issues are. So we do a lot of that in our community and beyond. We have direct education programs in our school systems, and especially increasingly in the underserved school systems where so many of the kids, living in the Central Coast, the ocean is their backyard, but they don't even have access to it, so they don't understand. If you just simply don't understand and you're not aware, you can't, begin to be part of the solution. So it all starts with that awareness building and education. And then, our advocacy work we were founded as an advocacy organization 35 years ago. There was the threat of oil drilling off the Central Coast of California, and the Citizen Coalition came together to prevent that, and that was one of the first wins that Save Our Shores had. And then the next, moving on to creating the sanctuary in the Monterey Bay. And one of our more recent campaigns and sort of big successes has been the plastic bag ban in Santa Cruz County, which was one of the first places to put that kind of ban into place. So we have still a tremendous amount of advocacy work to do. We're working on the plastic straw issues right now. We're supporting legislation around the microbead issues as well. And then, of course, what a lot of people know Save Our Shores for best is our direct action, which is taking, an army of volunteers, literally thousands of volunteers across the Monterey Bay communities to do beach cleanups on, basically on an everyday basis. Our staff can't be out there every day, but we've trained hundreds of stewards who go out there and lead various beach cleanups. Unfortunately, we still have hot spots in the area, places that get tremendously trashed. So there's still a lot of education and awareness building, and working further upstream, collaborating with the watershed organizations and the river and estuary organizations where a lot of this flows from inland. We also target corporations in terms of bringing them out, getting them to sponsor some of our activities, letting their employees see firsthand sort of what happens when the various products and packaging they put out into the marketplace isn't disposed of in the way that it should. So we look at those issues as well. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think with all the beach cleanups and all the community development that you're doing, I think it's another addition to the human well-being. It creates a sense of community, which is wonderful.
Absolutely, people coming together for something that they really care about and believe in, and is part of their, like for me, and as Dianna said, the ocean is part of my heart and soul. I grew up always being on the beach, enjoying the water, and was taught from a young age to carry out whatever trash we brought to the beach, and there doesn't seem to be that same ethic. Somewhere we lost that, and it's time to recreate that ethic across communities and in families and just everywhere, and in companies, particularly in corporations as well.
Right, and talking about source reduction and plastic bag bans, we have Andrew Almack, who's working on increasing recycling, and he's currently in India. He kind of switched continents with me. I came here and then he went there. So, and Andrew, can you put, if you can move your mobile? Can you put your camera so that we can see your face more? And then go ahead.
Okay, how's this?
Yeah, great. So tell us about your work in India. What are you doing there at this point?
Yeah, so I guess my work is really focused on developing regions that really just lack the tax revenue to support solid waste management programs like we have in North America. And I really believe that a lot of the plastic entering the ocean is coming from these regions that they just don't know what to do with their waste. Well, 2 weeks ago, I met with someone from a municipality in a rural countryside of India. There is no recycling in their community. There's 0% recycling rate because truck to a facility that will be able to recycle it. It just doesn't work out. The value of the plastic isn't enough to cover the cost of transportation and overhead. So I think my approach to this problem, and I think there is a lot of different approaches that need to be taken, but the approach that I'm focused on is really looking at the economics of recycling in these informal economies where it's not necessarily government-sponsored waste collection. And so to do that, we've really looked at how what's happening, and so these informal economies really rely a lot on waste picker recyclers as the primary way that this plastic gets recycled. And so, just uncovering through, it's just an incredibly difficult life that they are going through, especially right now with the global fall in oil prices. That's led to more companies using virgin plastic instead of recycled plastic, and the demand for recycled plastic has just plummeted. So for example, within the last year here in India, the waste pickers have received 60% less than what they usually get. And we're talking about a demographic of people that are making very little and have very little savings. So there's a lot of waste pickers that can no longer do that. They have to try to find another way to get by. And so with less waste pickers feeding plastic into the supply chain, then the middlemen are closing down, the factories are closing down, and it's ultimately crippling the whole waste management infrastructure. So with Plastics for Change, an approach that we're taking to mitigate this global crisis is we've developed a mobile platform which connects the waste pickers, the middlemen, and the end buyers in a mutually beneficial trading service where we build transparency through the entire supply chain and accountability to ensure that those at the base are getting a fair rate. And then we connect them to the brand, to manufacturers who then get contracts with brands. And we really strive to be the most environmentally and socially responsible source of plastic for those manufacturers.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And guys, Marcus Eriksen will be leaving in another 7 minutes. So let's try to get more out of him now. Marcus, based on your experience, what are the most promising methods or technologies that you've seen, that you think can address the problem? And also another question, after answering both of them, I think we'll let you go, which is, you spoke about your child. Is that one of the driving factors for you to, keep the passion and then,
my child? Okay? The one who's running around me right now?
Yeah.
You can see? Yes, of course. Of course. I think, where waste is going to be in the coming, 20 to 30 years. We know ecologically the impact's going to be tremendous if we don't get a hold on our waste. There's one paper came out just recently showing that by 2050, all seabirds will be impacted by waste. And we kind of know that those three things I mentioned, the three things in science, the pillars of the science, now we understand, the distribution is global, it's toxic, it's just hitting all species worldwide, the entire marine food web. But one thing I'm noticing is that, now hearing everyone on the panel talk, we're talking about recycling, public education, looking at campaigns, waste management infrastructure. What I'm noticing now is that everyone knows there's plastic trash in the world's oceans, and the focus now when I go to conferences is how do we solve it? And I notice a great divide, this division, this philosophical divide. And it's a very powerful one, and it's typical of any issue, from smoking to nuclear power to the seatbelts in cars. It's the same kind of division between industry and conservationists, environmentalists. And the way I see that division playing out, it's very simply the linear economy versus a circular economy. The linear economy meaning you make the product and it goes through manufacture, consumption, and then collection, and then you burn or bury it. So burning it, the infrastructure for incineration is very much the tagline for the industry. Plastic industry wants to see incinerators around the world. In fact, the Ocean Conservancy came out with a report that really focuses on incineration. And the challenge is those big infrastructure projects, they undermine the circular economy, the recycling or the recycling efforts, the efforts to change product design, to address pellet loss. All these things in the circular economy get undermined when you focus on waste energy. Waste energy has this sort of trash burden that you must feed the beast. And that's a Hawaiian term for their big H2 incinerator. You got to feed the beast, otherwise they get taxed. It undermines recycle programs and other product bans and so forth. The other side of the coin are NGOs like ours and others that are here in this panel, is that we want to see a circular economy. Have the products that, as their post-consumer life, have some value. And we can then employ the people to go collect that waste because it has this intrinsic sort of value. Smarter products, better recovery systems, and then address some of the products that do not have any recovery plan whatsoever, like the small microbeads, the pellets you find leaving factories because of poor best management practices. So this division I see, circular economy versus linear economy, I think that's where the challenge is now, is you have these two entities that are going head-on. The bridge between the two, I believe one huge bridge is the B corporation model, where companies, and there are a lot of companies out there that are saying, we don't want our products to become part of the problem. And they're reforming, like Clean Canteen, To Go Where, all these companies that are making smarter products, thinking in a circular economy philosophy. That's the bridge between this great divide. Now, I'd love to hear what the panelists think of that, now or offline, or have this conversation discussion continue. That's what I feel.
And talking about waste to energy, I worked with an organization called the Waste to Energy Research and Technology Council, and even within waste to energy, I think there are different shades where some people are willing to look forward and change, and then some people are kind of just going with the old model. So I think it's an entirely different discussion that we hope to have at some point, because that is a very contentious issue. After religion, I saw waste to energy being debated just as passionately. So great. And Marcus, so do you have anything else to add?
No, that's it. So we're going to leave it there with this great division. And I think that contentious issue, that's where the whole plastic pollution conversation, I've seen a lot of conversation around that. Are we going to go with waste to energy and just get rid of it all? Or are we going to emphasize and support the circular economy strategies that are working around the world, like what Andrew is doing, like what PPC is working on, Save Our Shores. We're all trying to keep the material and not waste it, not burn it, but those smarter strategies to recover it before it gets out to sea.
Sure, great, wonderful.
Could I add something to that?
Sure, definitely. Go ahead, Dianna.
I just wanted to say, when I met Paul Connett last year, we had a long discussion about this, and he said burning it is the least effective use of the energy that's held within it.
I agree. And so, Marcus, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, we hope to have you on more panels and then keep the engagement going on.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have to leave, but thank you so much for the opportunity.
Don't worry. Thank you very much. Bye. Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Great. And Katherine, talking about the circular economy, I mean, you've had a lot of experience in that. And as a solution or as a new idea altogether, I mean, it's not a new idea, but the terminology and people coming together under this agenda, what do you think about it when in terms of plastic pollution?
Yeah, I mean, I do definitely think that where we need to go in the future is a more circular economy and more circular systems of commerce. As you said, it's not really a new idea. It's a new packaging of several ideas that have been focused on trying to make a more closed-loop, kind of non-linear, more circular commerce system across the globe. I think the work that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is doing in that space is probably the best known, the most recognized. They're the ones who coined the term circular economy, but it's been building off of Bill McDonough's work and Cradle to Cradle, work that goes back 25 years or more, people who first came up with the idea of extended producer responsibility. You know, Mark has talked about the need for those kinds of stewardship programs, and yes, indeed, there is need for that kind of collection system. However, you know, the way EPR actually works in the world is not so much that the producers are responsible to the point that they're designing products that continue to have value and they take them back and use them in next generation. They're simply funding the waste management system. It's just shifting the cost burden, and in fact, they pass that burden back on down to the consumer. So, you know, it's the individual citizen who really has the ultimate responsibility. So if we can shift the way businesses think about their business model, if they can recognize the value that is in the materials that they now consider waste, and that in particular the plastic industry is happy to send up the smokestack, there's incredible value in that. I mean, a recent figure I heard was like the value of plastics that goes to waste, and you know, like in 1 year is almost as high as $11 million. If we could recover that and reuse it in the system, think about the opportunities for companies to find a whole new economic model, different way of doing business that is actually more profitable for them, which is always kind of, you know, a big concern in the corporate sector.
Agree. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, in your circles or in your experience, what are the most promising campaigns or technologies? I mean, can you name some organizations or technologies like Andrew's? You know,
you know, in terms of technologies or organizations that are working towards circular economies or finding other solutions. Yeah, well, you know, personally, I think what Andrew is doing in the idea of fair trade plastics is an incredibly awesome and innovative idea. I think if it can take hold, if he can prove his business model and he can bring the corporate side on board to actually be willing to buy plastics at a fair trade price, that'll be a tremendous game changer. I honestly believe that. And, you know, and I also think that the challenge is huge. I mean, and Andrew mentioned it, the price of oil has plummeted. Virgin plastic is cheaper again than recycled plastic. Companies are quite fickle, you know, they're on the recycle bandwagon and they use recycled material when the price fluctuation favors that side. You know, when it flips, they're happy to just go back to the virgin plastic. And we need to change that mindset. And even if, you know, it becomes, well, there's no reason to be using virgin plastic. I mean, in some sectors, some types of polymers, there's not sufficient collection of materials to have enough recyclate. You know, but in this country, in the U.S., we have a 27% recovery rate for PET plastic bottles. That's just,
which is really low. Yeah.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's just unacceptable. And this is a highly educated, generally well-informed society. When you get into the other communities where, you know, economic development is even just starting to take hold, you know, the people that Andrew are working with, the waste collectors, the waste pickers, you know, it's scary to think the enormity of the issue. And when we can't get it right in a highly developed economic society, maybe there's a chance. And the hope is that, you know, the chances, if you get to an economy and an ecosystem, a financial and an environmental ecosystem that is still just emerging, we can introduce the better ways of doing business before they follow in the steps of all of the unintended consequences of industrialization that we've seen and we've experienced in the U.S. and Europe and in the Western.
Right. I think hopefully I've seen this with multiple technologies. Maybe the developing countries can jump a step and then go to the next step. So Wonderful. Thank you. And talking about promising campaigns and methods of addressing this problem, Dianna has clearly made a very significant lifestyle change with new choices which do not contribute to the plastic pollution. So I was just wondering, can you talk a little bit about that and then show us?
Sure. I'll just talk about it basically from our first campaign with Plastic Pollution Coalition is called the Refuse campaign. And what we did is we took the 3R model, reduce, reuse, recycle, and added a 4th R onto the front, which is whenever possible, refuse single-use and disposable plastic. So, for example, if I go out to a cafe or I go out for a meeting, if I'm going to a coffee shop, I'm really into these cups, actually. They're made by this cool company called Hydro Flask, but they're double-walled ones that people are making, and they keep your drinks really cold or really hot for a long time, which I like. I'm also a super fan of stainless steel straws, no straw, ordering drinks normally with no straw, pull out my own reusable steel or glass straw, and I'm also a fan of paper straws and wax paper straws. I grabbed some so I could show you guys. And I'm kind of in love with both to-go-ware, makes these little kits with bamboo utensils in them, but I'm also in love with these ones from a company called Bamboo Home, and they make a nice little case on top. And I always carry these with me. The to-go-ware ones have chopsticks in them, which I love, and if I'm out with my niece and something like that, kids can use a spoon and the fork, and I can try and figure out how to eat the frozen yogurt with chopsticks. But it's little things like that. It's not a super big deal, but I try to explore them and test them out and use them myself. And what I realize, especially when I'm traveling by plane or going on trips to a meeting or a conference, it's fun. I mean, it makes my bag a little bit heavier. I carry both the double-walled cup and I carry a single-walled cup with me. And I oftentimes on the plane will ask if they could pour something into my own cup, and they're usually pretty accommodating now. I think people are beginning to become more aware. Oftentimes when I say, hi, I'd like an iced tea or a lemonade, no straw, please don't put any plastic in my drink, people will ask me why, or people will say, oh, is that because a lot of plastic's getting in the ocean? Many people saw the video that went viral of the marine turtle and the scientist, the biologist, extracting the straw from its nose, which, you felt the pain of this turtle. But anyway, I mean, my feeling is kind of whatever it takes. Once you make this connection, it also really makes me realize that when I was a kid, I went camping a lot with my parents. I grew up here in Southern California. We'd go to Yosemite, we'd go to the mountains, and we always used reusable things. There was no use of disposable things, and when you hiked up into the mountains, you didn't leave any garbage behind you. You brought everything back. Mm-hmm. So I think that maybe in a way we need to think of ourselves as continually as campers or as travelers, and a kit or a few things with us that make it easier for us to live a more plastic-free life. And granted, I am not perfect. Nobody I know is perfect, but it certainly is fun, and it's really fun with kids to try and to rise to the occasion of the challenge, which is what I think really we all need to do.
Yeah. Sorry, and I think definitely through what you're doing, you're cutting a big chunk of the waste that you generate every year, or so I think that's just wonderful. Just these reusable items, how much difference that they can make. And Andrew, can you talk about the? I know Katherine mentioned what you should be doing next, but how's that going? How's the reception? What's the status of your solution, and what do you think about the future?
Yeah, well, I guess the status is that it is nothing short of a catastrophe right now in these communities with this 60% drop in the income of some of the most marginalized members of society in these communities. So the reception's been great in that sense, because there's a desperate need for the solution, not only for the environmental side of it, but also for the humanitarian side of it. So yeah, it's going really well, and I think in terms of the question of what campaigns that I think and what technologies, ideas have the most promising potential. Well, I think it's kind of twofold. I mean, first of all, the global warming, it's absolutely terrifying, and I think people are starting the global shift in consciousness is starting to happen. Or we increase there because of the CO2 savings, because it's dramatic how much energy and CO2 it really does save when you replace the use of virgin plastic that had to be pumped out of the Gulf of Mexico or from the tar sands or from Saudi Arabia, and then it had to be sent to a facility where just an enormous amount of energy had to be used to actually combine the polymers, and then it had to be sent to another distribution resin manufacturer to another. The amount of CO2 that can be saved, I think, will really be a driving force for companies converting to recycled plastic. And in fact, I believe there has to be an emerging market mechanism that will reward the use of recycled plastic, and whether it's a tax or a fee on the use of virgin plastic. So almost like, I'm hesitant to use the word cap and trade, but something like that to really have a market-driven approach for rewarding the companies that are using recycled plastic. And if I think we can do that, then it'll help the entire infrastructure and the waste management systems, which are addressing the cause, kind of on the economic level. And then of course there's so much technology that's continuing to get better and better. Panasonic, they have a new type of recycling where they basically pulverize the plastic and shoot out all the little micro bits, and they're able to get really high quality resins or recycled plastic from that. There's a new generation of the plastic to oil technology coming on board. I think is going to have a huge impact, especially in developing regions, because it can be decentralized and create demand for the lower value plastics, which there just aren't markets for right now. So I think there's a lot of technologies that will come on board, and then the idea is, I think it's from this problem, and there's more and more tools in the tool belt, so to speak, tools in the tool case for addressing it. And so whether it's looking at mobile platforms for increasing the recycling rates in developing countries, or whether it's many other river discharge nets, or you name it. I think there's just more and more people working on it, and I think that's ultimately a huge positive trend going forward.
And I agree. And then what you spoke about plastics reminds me of an infographic where they show all the processes that take behind creating a plastic spoon, let's say a single-use plastic spoon, and then the amount of time that you actually use it, or a straw. Just use it for a minute, and then it goes into the trash, back into the system. But okay, finally we have only 1 more minute, and so everyone, do you have any concluding remarks to go? Maybe we can start with Katherine.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I wanted to mention earlier. Marcus mentioned a study that came out by Ocean Conservancy that is placing kind of significant potential on the waste to energy as a solution, in particularly in emerging markets. And while I 100% or 1,000% agree that the end solution for plastic shouldn't be waste to energy, certainly shouldn't be incineration. And it really shouldn't be waste energy. I think in fairness to Ocean Conservancy and the people who are working on solutions, it is a starting point. Right now, turning flexible packaging, for which there is no other end solution, into energy is a better solution than landfilling it. But it
or
shouldn't
then
be the end
sending
goal.
it to the plastics in the oceans.
Right. I mean, it shouldn't be the end goal. And my fear in the fact that people support waste energy or think, oh, we found a solution for plastic pollution and it's waste energy, that's just the starting point. That's just a way to keep it out of the landfill today. What we need to do is make sure that they don't then get lazy and sit back on their haunches and say, problem solved. It's not solved. You know, and we need to keep investing and finding the technologies that are going to allow for separation of complex plastics and mixed materials and things like that. So it's a fair solution at the starting point, but it can't be the end game. And I think that's, you know, what I'd like to close with.
Great, thank you very much. Dianna?
To the point of the Ocean Conservancy study, I would just add that you know, Ocean Conservancy is very much aligned with industry, and so it makes sense that their recommendation and the focus of the report would be towards incineration. That said, their Trash Free Seas Alliance has existed for several years now and been working on solutions to the issue, and frankly, I'm surprised that this is really the main thing that they would come out with so much bravado. So my parting thoughts around that are, in fact, having made artwork for 25 years out of plastic, I have to say that I actually have an area where I'm in agreement with the plastic industry and the petrochemical industry. Material. But that said, if plastic is a valuable material, why are we designing things with intended obsolescence and continuing to do that, including packaging, when we know that it's going to be used for a very short amount of time? This doesn't seem like an intelligent thought process to me. And so along those lines, my parting thoughts would be, we need everybody on board at whatever level you're able to comprehend and approach this issue. You can do what you can do as an individual, you can do what you can do at your university or your high school, your middle school, or your grammar school. There are lots of kids doing incredible things like getting rid of plastic bottled water on their school campus and saying, hey, we have a right to drink the tap water here, let's filter our tap water, let's put in new drinking fountains, and let's all drink out of reusable non-plastic containers that are not potentially you know, giving us the effects of exposure to the plasticizers and chemicals which are used to manufacture these plastics. Because there are all these illnesses that have been associated with those things, including diabetes and obesity. This is just, hello, I want to say to everybody, wake up, wake up. We have the power to change things. And to that note as well, what Andrew was saying, you know, in the United States, there are many, many cities and towns that have no infrastructure to recycle things. So it's a global problem. This is a global crisis, and we need all hands on deck. And I invite everyone to get engaged, to join Plastic Pollution Coalition, to work with all of these other groups and help in any way that you can.
Great, thank you. We're 4 minutes over time. Thank you to everyone for staying with us. But I'd like to get some final words from Andrew before leaving. Andrew, go.
Yeah, sure. So I think that it's a great time where there's more and more awareness of this, especially plastics entering the ocean. I think that the thing that is still out of sight, out of mind is the amount of plastics entering the atmosphere. The amount of plastics that are being burnt, and it's something that's very hard to measure. So we have stats around, we think there's 8 million tons of plastic entering the ocean, but we have no idea how much is just being burnt in these regions that don't have formal waste management, and that's causing just so many toxic chemicals entering the atmosphere. So I think that's just another part of the problem that I'd like to see get more awareness. Also, it's just really important to focus on the areas where there can be the greatest return on investment in terms of the impact that can be generated. So I think really focusing on where plastic is entering the ocean. I think the latest Ocean Conservancy report outlined the 5 countries in Asia where around 40 or 50% of the plastic entering the ocean is coming from, and I think really focusing on those areas where no one's explained what plastic does. No one's explained. I've hosted a community facilitation workshop with members of the entire recycling supply chain last week, and no one knew what global warming was. So we had to explain that to them. They're the ones that are in the trenches, the day-to-day heroes, actually saving the CO2, and just explaining that. So I think focusing on where there can be the greatest social return on investment, I think is really important to focus on as well.
Great. Andrew, I'll have to stop you there. So thanks to everyone. And one last thing that I have to mention there on greatest return on investment is I've been to the International Solid Waste Association conference last month, and then they came to the conclusion that developing countries stopping increasing collection coverage in developing countries and closing the dump sites and reducing open burning are the 3 major parts where we can invest more money in. So thank you very much to everyone. Thanks for staying a little longer with us. And thank you, Andrew, Dianna, and Katherine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye, all.